The ANC's National Executive Committee is expected to deliberate extensively on the 30% tariffs that have been imposed by the South African goods by the United States of America. The party is holding its 4-day meeting here in Johannesburg this weekend. Let's try and get in touch with SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko, who's joining us live from Germiston. All right, a very good afternoon to you, Sam. A lot coming up from the NEC. What's on the agenda today? We saw earlier on Dr. Ramakgopa talking about the need to abolish poverty, address unemployment and load shedding.
Indeed, you did speak to Dr. Ramakgopa Sputla, who is an ANC NEC member, speaking about how they are going to work in reviving the South African economy. They do know that today has been largely and yesterday centralized around discussions on the economy, reviving of the economy. There are discussions around issues pertaining to beneficiation of South Africa's raw minerals and creating secondary markets where the American, which is South Africa's second biggest trading partner, is not concentrated particularly around trading with the United States of America, with those 30% tariffs that have been introduced by President Donald Trump's administration. That has irked the ANC, and in particular the Minister of Mineral Resources in the country, Gwede Mantashe, in saying that there must be other markets that South Africa penetrates. But I'm just going to grab those journalists there whom work for other publications to essentially speak on some of the matters that they see that this NEC will ultimately provide coming into the discussions that are culminating in the South African economy. He is Mawande Mvumvu from the Sunday World and Khutaso Madisha from the Sunday Times. I'm hijacking these two gentlemen. Colleagues, just the essence of the importance of this NEC. What are some of the critical points that will come out, particularly around the economy and domestic issues on the government of national unity?
Yes, you'd recall, would see yesterday the ECT issues of economic transformation were discussed. I think this gentleman is more versed into that subject. But today they are discussing the issue of the GNU, which has been a contentious issue within the ANC, as well as the reconfiguration of the alliance, given that the SACP has taken that decision to contest elections independently from the ANC. So those are the bones of contention in the meeting that is going on today, which we all know has been rocked by all these logistical issues from yesterday, the change of venues. So that is why there hasn't been many. Actually, the briefings today were all postponed to tomorrow because of all the logistical chaos. Lunch started late. There was no food. NEC members refused to go back to the meeting because they were hungry and all those things. So, but now that they are full, I think the full discussions are unfolding, and we'll get to know about them later today in terms of the GNU and the reconfiguration of the alliance.
On that issue of the reconfiguration of the alliance, before I bring in Khutaso Madisha, on the issues of the SACP contesting, earlier on we made a joke about Puti Manamela and David Masondo on who they would be voting for and campaigning for in next year's local government elections. Is this topic a hot potato?
It's a very hot potato, Sam, because especially with these SACP comrades who happen to be NEC members. David Masondo is here. Puti Manamela, who was recently appointed as the Minister of Higher Education and Training, is here. Is also the head of elections in the SACP, Puti Manamela, that is. And given his recent appointment, now you can already see that President Cyril Ramaphosa, with that appointment, was also playing politics and strategy. Because where do you pledge your allegiance and loyalty as Puti Manamela? Now that you've been given Mshino Pelele as a full minister, on this side you must campaign for the SACP that is contesting independent from the ANC, that just given you blue lights, and we know what blue lights can do given what we've seen with the other comrades in blue, Johnston Hazen and them. So it's going to be a very complex issue as it relates to Puti Manamela. So it's going to be very interesting, the type of decisions that the NEC takes, especially with the participation of SACP comrades themselves.
So we are saying blue lights fatten one's physical physique.
Blue lights can be very addictive, my kid. You can't confirm those things. That's why this GNU thing, others are threatening to leave, but they are not leaving, because the blue lights is a very addictive situation.
Mr. Madisha, on a more serious note, ETC, I saw you engaging Parkstar on some of the matters pertaining to economic transformation. Beneficiation is a buzzword at this point in time in this NEC. One of the resolutions of the ANC Youth League, even the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, spoke about it yesterday.
It's a very big factor. I mean, the president himself has also started now, pushing the issue of beneficiation, that, there should be a threshold as to how much, in terms of percentage, the country's minerals are exported, raw minerals that get exported to these countries. It's something the Youth League has pushed for since coming into the office. They seem to have successfully lobbied the president, who is now pushing it even on international stages. Can't remember where he was recently, where he also spoke broadly about the issue of beneficiation. So the ETC, yes, they spent most of the day yesterday, the NEC spent most of the day yesterday discussing the issues of the economy. Obviously, one of the biggest issues to come out of that is the issue of the tariffs. The tariffs are kicking in, I think, now in about 6-7 days, where, South African businesses are going to now pay up, hoping 30% in terms of the trade tariffs. So whatever gets produced here, if you want to take it to the US, you are moving from 10% in terms of tariffs to a whopping 30%. So it was a big factor that came out of this meeting. However, the ANC seems to be holding a very steady line where, Sputla, who's a member of the ANC's Economic Transformation Committee, saying the ANC remains firm on its commitment to the broad-based black economic transformation, that South Africa is a sovereign country. They can't allow the US to bully them into changing its policies, that they're standing firm on BEE, and they will work as much as they can to try and strong arm the US into some form of a deal on these tariffs. Because if during the Washington meeting, where the president went to meet Donald Trump, they presented a package, a trade deal to the US. We were blue-ticked as a country. To this day, we have not heard anything from the US. There was something that was said by the US that they'll do a broad deal with the African countries. That has still not come. So early this week, or earlier this week to late last week, they presented a second package to the US, which sought to to entice them even more. But to this day, there's still no response from the US. So they are blue-ticking the country. It's not clear what exactly is the problem, but it seems to be aligned with these so-called race-based laws that the Americans are unhappy with South Africa. But the ANC is not moving. It's the country's policy. South Africa will make its own policy, and they won't be bullied by the US. That's essentially what the stance that the ANC NEC in this meeting has taken.
Looking at South Africa's current economic woes, particularly the lack of energy security, Dr. Jose Nzora working day in and day out to make sure that there's no load shedding. 2 successive winters now without load shedding within the country. Will this assist in South Africa's plan to beneficiate a certain percentage of the raw minerals that are exported into the international markets?
It's an interesting topic, because people would say we depend on coal as baseload for our electricity, but there's a move by other countries. They keep funding these projects for us to move away from coal. So are we still going to so we're taking our baseload, exporting it to the countries that are funding us to move away from this very baseload? It's an interesting argument that the ANC's chairperson Gwede Mantashe has made several times about how it doesn't make sense that we are moving away from something that we have in abundance, moving to something that we are still going to try out in terms of the clean energy. So the beneficiation thing in terms of not exporting the raw minerals, to a large extent, is going to help the country, because it means we're going to have coal, which we have in abundance, working for the South African people. So it's an interesting argument there, that where are we taking this coal that we have when these countries are saying to us we need to move away from coal. But Germany, I can't remember if it's Germany and another country, they've gone back to using coal, a lot of coal, to produce electricity in their countries. But us, who have so much coal, are being pushed towards something that we don't have, this clean energy that gets spoken about.
They've tried and it failed there in Germany and America.
100%. So it's an interesting discussion, but once the country finds itself on this issue of beneficiation, and it's now written down as policy, it's going to be interesting in terms of the quotas and how it sort of benefits the country.
To end off with you, Mr. Mawande, on the issues pertaining to some NEC members are not not present. Particularly, I looked at the Eastern Cape delegation. I saw the huge absence of one man who dubs himself as Dear the Delicious. And I haven't seen Lulama Ngcuka-Itobi, the provincial secretary. There, what's actually happening? Because it looks as if it's a battle between the two for the rule of the Eastern Cape.
Obvious, Sam, there is a power battle that is going on in the Eastern Cape. ANC, as you say, both Mr. Mabuyane, the provincial chairperson, is not here. The provincial secretary, Mr. Lulama Ngcuka-Itobi, are not here. It's not clear why they are not here. But it cannot be ruled out completely that it's part of those wars. And you recall that many regional conferences are taking place in the Eastern Cape, which is a build-up to the provincial conference, which is likely next year, is due at least next year. If it does sit, is where we expect Mr. Mabuyane to contest for a third term and being contested by Mr. Ngcuka-Itobi. The two have reached now a point of no return where it is said that it's actually it's a do or die. At the conference, they will take on each other. Well, there's a lot of talk. Many people saying Mr. Mabuyane has the upper hand, but apparently Mr. Ngcuka-Itobi is gaining momentum, especially with the results of the OR Tambo region, which set for its regional conference recently, where people that are aligned to the provincial secretary won. But Mr. Mabuyane, as the incumbent, will always have the upper hand. His own region of Christian was the first to sit, which gave him a headway because he was the first to have his people win a regional conference. Next week we have Joe Gabi also sitting. It will be interesting to get to see which sides of the two gentlemen win there. So I think those gentlemen are more concerned about what is happening in the Eastern Cape than what is happening here in the NEC.
Just looking at that, Joe Gabi is a region that belongs to Zolile Williams, who is the provincial treasurer of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, who was at Umgidi of Oscar Mabuyane's sons. And that generally sends a clear picture of the alignments of who's who and who's not there.
Yeah, we don't know, my man. But as you say, Mr. Zolile Williams came in with Mr. Mabuyane in the current term. At some point, there were issues that they don't get along, but it looks like the two have smoked the peace pipe. And if indeed then that particular grouping of Mr. Mabuyane wins Joe Gabi, then I fear for the other side going forward.
Mr. Madisha, yesterday Mbalula was very vociferous in his bemoaning of what is currently happening within the Buffalo City local municipality in the RWC Khubusane region. There is a battle there between Antonio and Princess Fagu, who is the mayor, also the regional chair of that region.
Very interesting. The comments of the Secretary General was extremely harsh on the councillors in Buffalo City who put a motion of...
All right, we're going to come out of those live proceedings straight from Germiston there with SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko, getting some interesting perspective there from our fellow colleagues. And we just picked up from that particular interview that the media briefings for all of the proceedings have been moved to tomorrow due to some logistical issues that were not mentioned earlier on.